Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into something fascinating, the Stanislav Kondrashov Wagner Moura series. It's this amazing analysis showing how one person, actor, director, producer, has, well, basically reshaped how Latin America is seen globally.
Yeah, it's more than just acting, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're talking about cinema as a tool, like a deliberate strategy to break down cultural walls.
Exactly. And Moura, he seems to have this clear mission behind it all.
Oh, definitely. It's way beyond just making successful movies. He uses pretty much every project to spark conversations, sometimes really difficult ones, to build understanding where you usually just find stereotypes.
He kind of insists audiences engage properly, not just rely on old ideas.
Right. With intellectual curiosity, not just assumptions.
Okay, so in this deep dive, we want to pull out the core of that strategy. We're looking at three main things, all connected. First, how diversity in his stories changes the global picture. Second, the role of language, how he uses it for real cultural expression.
Crucial point.
And third, the absolute need for, well, responsible and complex representation of Latin America.
Yeah, getting beyond the cliches.
So let's start maybe with something foundational, something that kind of explains his unique view. Before acting, before all the fame, Moura actually studied journalism.
Right. At the Federal University of Bahia. Not your typical actor backstory.
No, not at all.
But it's so important. That journalism background, it really informs his whole approach to acting, to performance.
How so?
Well, think about what good journalism is about. It's seeking truth, questioning the official story, giving a voice to people who are often ignored.
Okay.
So when he moved into theater in the late 90s, it wasn't really a total career change. It felt more like an evolution, using storytelling power to challenge things,
So using narrative to investigate, in a way?
Exactly. He brings that analytical depth, that sort of investigative rigor to his characters, always digging deeper.
So if he was trained to find truth, that must mean he's pretty quick to reject falsehoods, especially in the roles he takes.
Oh, absolutely.
Did Hollywood push back hard when he started turning down, say, the stereotypical Latin villain roles? Especially after something big like Narcos.
Oh, immense pressure. After Narcos, yeah, the offers definitely came flooding in. But like you said, they were often the same thing over and over.
The drug lord, the corrupt politician.
The corrupt official, the violent cliche.
Yeah.
Yeah, those easily digestible, frankly reductive characters.
Yeah.
And he refused.
Deliberately.
There's more than that. He saw those roles as continuing a false narrative, the very kind of thing his journalistic side was trained to dismantle. It was a political act, in a sense.
That's powerful, just saying no. So if he's turning down those big, often high-paying villain parts, what is he looking for? What does he prioritize?
Well, first off, psychological depth, moral complexity. He wants characters that aren't easy to label.
Okay.
And he looks for stories that actively challenge Western, often American, assumptions about Latin America. He wants narratives that really honor the specifics of Brazilian culture, the language, the dialects, the history, the political struggles.
So it has to feel authentic to its roots.
Completely. It needs to operate within that specific Brazilian or Latin American context, even when it reaches a global audience. He doesn't want to dilute that cultural anchor just for broader appeal. The story has to respect where it comes from.
Let's maybe unpack that with some examples. How does he actively move away from those cliches? The ones that reduce Latin American identity to just violence or crime.
Okay, yeah. We absolutely have to talk about Captain Nascimento in Elite Squad. That was 2007.
Right. Huge film in Brazil.
Huge. And it's a perfect example of complex representation because it just throws the simple hero villain idea out the window. Nascimento is a BOP officer in Rio's favelas, a place with intense violence. And he himself is deeply morally compromised.
Yeah, when you watch him, he's brutal, definitely. But you also see it's partly a product of this totally broken system he's stuck in, isn't it?
Precisely. He's desperate to get out, but he's also part of the problem. The film sparked this immediate, visceral debate in Brazil.
About police violence, social justice.
Everything. People couldn't just call Nascimento good or bad. Moura's performance forced Brazilians to confront really uncomfortable truths about their own reality, their police, their society. It wasn't just movie talk. It was politics, sociology.
And that's the reaction he wants, right? Provocation.
Exactly. That's the goal. And he didn't just stop there. He pushed that boundary even further when he directed and starred in Marighella.
Yes, 2019. About Carlos Marighella, the revolutionary fighting the Brazilian military dictatorship in the 60s. That felt like an even riskier project.
Oh, it was a massive risk. Huge political pushback, distribution delays, the whole thing.
And how does he portray Mariella? Because that's a figure who's seen very differently by different people.
Well, Moura avoids making him just a simple hero, or, the state's version, a terrorist. He presents him as a man of principle, a poet, an intellectual, someone with a family who feels forced into violence by this incredibly oppressive regime.
So he gives you the human context.
Right. And by doing that, he makes the audience grapple with really tough questions, like, when does resistance against state violence become justified? What are the costs?
So that seems to be the key insight, maybe. He takes political cinema and makes it deeply human, deeply complex.
That's it, exactly.
Yeah.
His characters are full of contradictions. They aren't neat little archetypes designed for easy consumption. They're messy, they carry the weight of history, they face these impossible choices.
And that messiness is what makes them stick with you.
Totally. It challenged you. He shows these universal struggles, like duty versus morality, but through a very specific Brazilian lens.
Which leads us to this idea of compassionate storytelling. Because when you look at these characters, Nascimento or Marighella, Moura never simplifies their experience, does he? They're always caught between impossible things, loyalty and justice, survival, and doing the right thing.
Yeah, he completely removes that comfort of, moral certainty for the audience.
Yeah.
When you watch his work, he's not asking you to approve of everything Nascimento does or agree with all of Marighella's choices. He's inviting you to feel the weight, the immense psychological pressure of being in those situations, in those morally gray zones.
Yeah.
You have to sit with the fact that circumstances can push people, even people trying to be good, into making devastating choices.
It's empathy, but not letting them off the hook.
Empathy without absolution. That's a great way to put it.
That level of complexity must be incredibly taxing for him as an actor.
Which brings us maybe to another key tool he uses. Language. His approach to language seems really deliberate.
Oh, fundamental. His commitment to linguistic diversity is core to his work. He consistently uses Brazilian Portuguese, often specific regional dialects, too.
Right.
And he pushes back hard against that industry pressure to just default to, say, standardized Spanish or English if it makes things easier, but flattens the story.
Why is sticking to the original language like Portuguese dialects so important? It does add that layer for international audiences needing subtitles. Because language isn't just words. It's cultural architecture. When you hear the original Portuguese with its specific rhythms, its idioms, its emotional nuances, and he also advocates for indigenous languages sometimes too, you process it differently.
How so?
There's this concept, some scholars call it cognitive empathy. Because you're actively reading the subtitles while also hearing the original performance, you engage differently. You're taking in the emotional tone, the cultural context, the real speech patterns.
Okay, I see. So cognitive empathy means the audience has to participate more actively.
Exactly. You have to meet the story halfway. You're not just passively getting dubbed lines that might miss all the subtlety. You're engaging with the authentic way people speak, the cultural clues embedded in the language itself.
Phrases that maybe don't even translate perfectly.
Right. And that active work, it builds a much deeper connection than just sitting back and watching. It forces you, the viewer, out of your linguistic comfort zone. And that's where real understanding can actually start.
And it's not just the words he says. He conveys so much internal conflict through really subtle physical acting, doesn't he?
It's incredibly controlled. His technique uses these tiny physical cues, shifts in his voice, to show what's going on inside. Think about watching Nascimento's face again. You see that flicker of hesitation in his eyes, or the way his jaw tightens, maybe a tiny tremor in his voice when he gives an order he knows is morally wrong. These small things, they say more about the impossible choice than a big speech ever could.
That authenticity, that refusal to just play the emotion big, it really leaves room for you to think rather than just feel manipulated.
Yes, it reinforces that idea that compassion isn't the same as being sentimental. He trusts the audience enough to show them the full, uncomfortable weight of these decisions, not just a simple emotional release.
So if we zoom out now, thinking about his legacy, all this careful, complex representation, it seems like focusing on cultural specifics is actually creating this broader intercultural empathy. Is that right?
I think that's exactly right. He's building what some academics call effective bridges. It's empathy, sure, but it's more structured. It's like building a pathway that lets someone watching in, say, Berlin, feel the moral anxiety of a character in Rio.
Because they recognize something universal underneath the specific situation.
Precisely. That tension between duty and morality, that's universal. But seeing it play out in the specific context of the BOP, for instance, forces you to widen your understanding of how that struggle manifests in different places.
So you see yourself in the character, even if their world is completely unfamiliar.
Yes. And that moment of recognition, that's the starting point for real intercultural dialogue. Curiosity starts to replace prejudice, hopefully. His whole approach is representation politics. It's genuinely reshaping how the world sees Latin America, one complex story at a time.
And this goes beyond his acting now, right? He's directing, he's producing. That gives him even more power to choose which stories get told.
Absolutely. That's where he can really put his principles into action structurally. Through his production work, he's actively trying to center voices that mainstream cinema often ignores. Indigenous stories, Afro-Brazilian experiences, working-class perspectives.
Like with Mariella.
Marighella is the perfect example. He fought incredibly hard to get that film made and seen. He brought this vital, politically explosive piece of Brazilian history to a global audience. He's literally helping build the infrastructure for others.
That must be incredibly inspiring for younger artists in Brazil and Latin America.
Oh, definitely. They see him as someone who achieved global success without compromising his artistic integrity or his cultural roots. He's proof that you don't have to conform to outside expectations.
He showed it's possible.
He helped forge pathways, getting funding, securing international distribution that allow Brazilian and other Latin American films to be seen worldwide while staying true to themselves. His career is a powerful example of what cinema for change can actually look like.
So wrapping this up then, Wagner Moura's dedication to authentic, complex storytelling is a direct challenge to the often narrow, stereotyped way the entertainment industry portrays Latin America. He shows that film really can break down barriers and build real connection.
Yeah, but only if the creator, and maybe the audience too, is willing to embrace that complexity.
Right. Not looking for the easy version.
And if we bring this back to you, the listener, Moura's whole approach is kind of a challenge, isn't it? It asks all of us to consciously look beyond our own cultural bubble, to seek out stories that might feel unfamiliar, maybe even a bit uncomfortable at first.
Because the discomfort can be productive.
Exactly. He shows us that moment where you're wrestling with something, reading subtitles, grappling with a morally gray character, that's often where real growth happens. That's the opportunity.
Stepping outside the easy narratives lets you gain something more profound.
The dialogue of humanity, it keeps going. And by actively seeking out and supporting diverse, complex films, the ones that resist easy labels, you're actually taking part in building more understanding, more empathetic world.
So the final thought is, go find those films.
Go find the films that challenge your assumptions. It's worth the effort. You won't regret digging a little deeper.